Paul Manafort. AP photo, Matt Rourke. President Donald Trump's former campaign chairman Paul Manafort has been a key figure in the special counsel Robert Mueller's investigation into Russian election meddling and possible Trump campaign collusion. Manafort is currently on trial for alleged financial crimes, defending himself against 18 federal charges of tax evasion, tax fraud, and bank fraud. He was first indicted in October 2017 on 12 other federal charges, including money laundering and failing to register as a foreign agent. That second trial is scheduled to begin this fall. Manafort is pleading not guilty to all the charges against him. Here's what you need to know about his life. Paul Manafort was born in 1949 and raised in New Britain, Connecticut, a largely liberal town where his father served 3 terms as a popular Republican mayor. Like President Donald Trump, Manafort comes from a real estate family. Alongside his political work, his father also ran the family construction company, Manafort Brothers Inc., founded by his Italian immigrant father. Instead of taking over the family business, Manafort decided to pursue his interest in politics and moved to Washington, D.C., where he earned both an undergraduate business degree and a law degree at Georgetown University. A Republican operative and international gun-for-hire, Trump's campaign chair and convention manager Paul Manafort appears at a press conference at the Republican convention in Cleveland. Thomson Reuters. While working at a private law firm 2 years after graduating from law school, Manafort began advising Republican President Gerald Ford's 1976 campaign. Since the 1970s, he has established deep and sometimes murky connections in Washington and around the globe, serving as political lobbyist, advisor, and an international political consultant for leaders across the world, including dictators Mobutu Sese Seko of the Democratic Republic of Congo and Ferdinand Marcos of the Philippines. Manafort's international work has long raised eyebrows among Democrats in Washington. In 2004, he became a top advisor to Ukrainian President Viktor Yanukovych, a pro-Russian strongman whom Manafort is widely credited with helping win the presidency in 2010. Yanukovych was ousted in 2014 after widespread demonstrations against his decision to back out of a deal with the EU that would have distanced Ukraine from Russia and fostered closer ties with the West. On February 20, 2014, Ukrainian riot police opened fire on thousands of demonstrators who had gathered in central Kiev. 53 protesters were killed that day, and dozens more over the next few days. Ukrainian prosecutors have said Yanukovych ordered the security forces attack on protesters, and at least one human rights lawyer representing the victims is investigating what role, if any, Manafort played in encouraging Yanukovych's crackdown. Yanukovych fled to Russia amid the protests and is now living under the protection of the Kremlin, a sick-effing tyrant. Manafort with Trump senior advisor Stephen Miller. Through Ungerer, Getty Images. The New York Times reported last year that Manafort was in debt to pro-Russian interests by as much as $17 million by the time he joined the Trump campaign. Legal complaints filed by representatives of Oleg Deripaska, a Russian billionaire allied with Russian President Vladimir Putin, in the Cayman Islands in 2014 claimed Deripaska gave Manafort $19 million that year to invest in a Ukrainian TV company. The project fell through, and Manafort all but disappeared without paying Deripaska back, the filings claimed. A subsequent court filing from the special counsel Robert Mueller's office in June 2018 revealed Manafort owed Deripaska an additional $10 million for an unpaid loan. Deripaska and Manafort had worked together before. Deripaska signed a $10 million annual contract with Manafort in 2006, according to the AP, for a lobbying project in the U.S. that Manafort said would greatly benefit the Putin government. In another bizarre twist, hackers broke into Manafort's daughter's iPhone and published 4 years' worth of purported text messages, roughly 300,000 messages, on the dark web. In a series of texts reviewed by Business Insider that appear to have been sent by Andrea to her sister, Jessica, in March 2015, Andrea said their father had no moral or legal compass. "Don't fool yourself," Andrea wrote to her sister, according to the texts. That money we have is blood money. You know he has killed people in Ukraine? Knowingly, she continued, according to the reviewed texts. As a tactic to outrage the world and get focus on Ukraine. Remember when there were all those deaths taking place? A while back. About a year ago. Revolts and whatnot. Do you know whose strategy that was to cause that, to send those people out and get them slaughtered? In another text to her cousin, who was also her father's business partner, Andrea called Manafort a sick f***ing tyrant. A Ukrainian member of parliament accused Manafort of accepting nearly $1 million from the country's pro-Russia party of regions, and then laundering it through a company that claims to sell computers. Ukrainian lawyers also want to question Manafort about what role he played, if any, in the 2014 police killings of protesters in Kiev. Manafort has denied all the allegations against him. He has previously said he has never knowingly spoken to Russian intelligence officers, and I have never been involved with anything to do with the Russian government or the Putin administration. Manafort's ties to Trump: Robert Mueller, Paul Manafort, Donald Trump, Michael Flynn, Vladimir Putin. Sky Gould. Business Insider. Manafort and Trump have been connected since the 1980s, when Trump hired Manafort's lobbying firm to help the Trump Organization. Trump became close with Manafort's business partner at the time, Roger Stone, a self-proclaimed dirty trickster, who served as an early advisor to Trump's presidential campaign. In 2006, Manafort and his wife bought a Trump Tower apartment, which Manafort still owns and resides in when he's in Manhattan. In March 2016, Trump hired Manafort to manage the Republican National Convention and wrangle delegates into supporting Trump. Manafort had experience convincing delegates to support Gerald Ford in 1976, the last time the Republican Party began a convention without having selected its presidential nominee. In May 2016, Manafort was promoted to the position of campaign chairman and chief strategist. He became the campaign's de facto manager after Trump fired Corey Lewandowski in late June. The New York Times, citing ledgers uncovered by an anti-corruption center in Kiev, reported on August 16, 2016 that $12.7 million in undisclosed cash payments from Yanukovych's pro-Russia party of regions had been earmarked for Manafort for his work with the party from 2007 to 2012. 3 days later, Manafort resigned from the campaign. The White House has attempted to distance itself from Manafort. Last year, former White House press secretary Sean Spicer told reporters that Manafort played a very limited role for a very limited amount of time in the campaign, despite having spent 5 months on the campaign and nearly 3 of those months as the chairman. Trump attempted to minimize Manafort's contributions to the campaign last year. I know Mr. Manafort. I haven't spoken to him in a long time, but I know him. He was with the campaign, as you know, for a very short period of time, for a relatively short period of time, Trump said. But in 2016, those close to Trump were quick to attribute the campaign's success to its former chairman. We couldn't be more happy with the work that he's doing, the way he's tackling these things, the way he's handling the organization of everything going forward, the president's eldest son Donald Trump Jr. told the AP in July 2016. In August 2016, former House Speaker and Trump loyalist Newt Gingrich told Fox News host Sean Hannity that nobody should underestimate how much Paul Manafort did to get this campaign to where it is right now. The FBI investigation heats up. Campaign manager Kellyanne Conway and Paul Manafort of Republican presidential nominee Donald Trump's staff speak during a roundtable discussion on security at Trump Tower in the Manhattan borough of New York, U.S., August 17, 2016. Reuters. Carlo Allegre. The Justice Department began looking into Manafort's dealings in Ukraine in 2014. He became the subject of a FISA warrant, which allowed the federal government to surveil him. But since Mueller was appointed as special counsel to lead the federal investigation into Russian interference in the 2016 election, Manafort has come under intensifying scrutiny. In early August 2017, The Washington Post reported that the FBI conducted a pre-dawn raid of Manafort's home, seizing tax documents, foreign banking records, and other materials relevant to the special counsel investigation. The Post reported last year that Manafort offered to provide private briefings about the Trump campaign to Deripaska. "If he needs private briefings, we can accommodate," Manafort wrote to his longtime employee Konstantin Kilimnik, a Russian-Ukrainian operative with suspected ties to Russian intelligence. This email came roughly 10 days before Trump campaign representatives lobbied to alter the language of an amendment to the GOP's draft party policy on Ukraine that denounced Russia's ongoing military aggression in Ukraine. Many saw the changes as pro-Russian, and some believed Manafort played a role in the policy shift. CNN reported that U.S. investigators had wiretapped Manafort both before and after the 2016 election, that Mueller's probe is looking into possible crimes committed over the past 11 years, and that the special counsel's team had warned Manafort that they are working to indict him on tax and financial charges. Some legal experts think that Mueller's intensifying focus on Manafort is an effort to pressure the former campaign chairman into providing damaging information about those close to Trump, and maybe Trump himself. A Tale of Two Trials. Former Trump campaign chief Paul Manafort speaks to reporters with Deputy Rick Gates. Matt Rourke. AP Mueller has charged Manafort with over 20 counts of financial and other crimes. Manafort is pleading not guilty to all the charges filed against him, and will defend himself in 2 separate federal trials. Manafort was first indicted in the District of Columbia in October 2017 on 12 federal charges, including money laundering and failing to register as a foreign agent. He was indicted a second time in February on an additional 18 counts of tax evasion and bank fraud in the Eastern District of Virginia. His first trial in Virginia on the tax and bank fraud charges is currently ongoing, and the second trial on the foreign agent and other charges is scheduled for September in D.C. Manafort had previously been out on supervised release after pleading not guilty in February, but a federal judge revoked his bond and sent him to jail in mid-June after prosecutors accused him and his associate, the former Russian intelligence operative Konstantin Kilimnik, of trying to tamper with witness testimony in the investigation. Complex layers of alleged financial crimes. Former Donald Trump presidential campaign manager Paul Manafort looks on during Game 4 of the American League Championship Series at Yankee Stadium on October 17, 2017 in the Bronx borough of New York City. Getty Images. The prosecution's first witnesses to take the stand in Manafort's Virginia trial delivered damning testimony to corroborate the charges of sweeping financial fraud. First, Manafort's bookkeeper and CPA, as well as tax accountant Cynthia Laporta, testified to helping Manafort file false tax returns and lie to banks by misrepresenting certain transactions as loans. Rick Gates, Manafort's close business associate and protege of over a decade, was also charged with fraud as part of Manafort's first indictment, but chose to take a plea deal and became a cooperating witness in the Mueller probe. Now the prosecution's star witness Gates first took the stand on Monday. He testified to illegally concealing 15 foreign bank accounts from authorities and helping file false returns at Mr. Manafort's direction, in addition to embezzling hundreds of thousands of dollars from Manafort by filing fake expense reports. Gates' testimony continued on Tuesday, and Manafort's defense team is scheduled to cross-examine him beginning Wednesday. The trial is expected to last weeks. Natasha Bertrand contributed to a previous version of this story. Sanam Sheth contributed reporting.